Tonight, we're following up on the story we first brought you nearly a year ago, issues with the Lee Summit Housing Authority.
The whole organization of Lee Summit Housing has gone down the tubes.
Over the last year, the executive director resigned, followed by the entire board of commissioners. An internal investigation led to its 3-person staff being fired. The agency at the center of a fraud investigation by the federal government.
If we keep letting this go on, small and pop shops like myself won't be able to survive.
Along the way, we have brought you the voices of taxpayers left behind, not receiving timely services and funding by those legally required to provide it.
When 50 people are expressing concerns and questions and ideas, it's hard to ignore that.
KSHB 41 reporter Alyssa Jackson has received many documents from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and explains why the Lee Summit Housing Authority received a troubled rating.
I got hundreds of documents back from the Department of Housing and Urban Development revealing operational struggles at the Lee Summit Housing Authority. It took a while to get all of this, but I've been digging into issues at the agency since last year. Every page printed gives a deeper look at how the Lee Summit Housing Authority has been functioning behind closed doors. Housing payment delays, federal compliance reviews, multiple investigations, both internal and external, all laid out in these records. Much of this happened under the purview of the last executive director, who resigned just weeks after our stories about the agency's dysfunction. Even she alluded to some of what we're hearing about now.
The further I have gotten into my tenure here, the more corruption, mishandling, and neglect I have found.
A report from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, scored the Housing Authority in several categories, including handling the Section 8 waiting list, reasonable rent, and expanding housing opportunities. In all but one category, they scored a 0. HUD rated the agency's performance troubled. There are tenants who would describe their living experience under the Housing Authority in a similar way.
Maintenance is putting out fires where it can and doing what he can, but we're just still here living in houses, in our homes that are falling down around us and scared to death to say anything.
Another HUD review, this time a 19-page compliance report, shared evidence the agency was committed to improving. But there are several areas where it isn't following its own guidelines or HUD's. The review had 46 findings, several mentions of recommendations and citations for non-negotiable changes, including the agency needing a review and approval process for handling and safekeeping the housing authority's assets, not appropriately verifying tenants' income or accurately calculating their rent, and using federal housing program funds for personal use at restaurants and stores. While the Lee Summit Housing Authority tries to stabilize with limited help, to boil down the federal government's stance, it's past time for it to get back on track. Something else that stood out to me from that compliance report is the Housing Authority had 6 units unoccupied for more than 180 days. But as of March, there were more than 3,200 people on the public housing waiting list. In the newsroom, Alyssa Jackson, KSHB 41 News.